Welcome to Headline Hub Updates. Subscribe and press the bell icon for more updates. August 11th, 2025. What began as an ordinary Monday morning would soon become a day that no one would forget. The air was thick with summer heat, but beneath the surface tension was brewing, unseen, unheard, until now. Suddenly the calm of summer shattered. Breaking news flashed across every screen. Trade war erupts. The United States, in a stunning move, slammed Canada with crippling tariffs, sending shockwaves through both nations. Across North America, headlines blared in bold letters, "Ottawa fires back, unprecedented aggression," says Prime Minister. The Canadian government responded swiftly, condemning the U.S. actions and promising retaliation. The world's attention snapped to the border. The world watched in disbelief as two of the closest allies, bound by decades of friendship and trade, became adversaries overnight. News anchors struggled to keep up as markets plunged and uncertainty spread like wildfire. The Dow and TSX nosedived, red numbers flashing across screens. Investors scrambled to dump shares tied to cross-border trade, fearing the worst. The financial world was in chaos, and the ripple effects were immediate. Phone lines at government offices jammed with panicked business owners desperate for answers. Questions poured in. What would happen to their contracts, their shipments, their livelihoods? No one seemed to have answers. The US-Canada border, once a symbol of trust and open exchange, now felt like a wall. Security tightened, and the familiar flow of goods and people slowed to a crawl. Tariffs weren't just numbers on a page, they were invisible barriers threatening millions of jobs. Factory workers worried about layoffs, and job fairs swelled with anxious faces searching for stability. Suddenly, the conflict was personal. Truck drivers found themselves stranded at the border. Factory workers faced the reality of layoffs, and small business owners watched their dreams teeter on the edge. The headlines had declared war, and for ordinary people the cost was about to become painfully real. Families gathered around kitchen tables discussing what the future might hold, as the world braced for what would come next. The spark? Copper. The Trump administration slapped a 25% tariff on all Canadian copper, citing national security and unfair trade. Ottawa was blindsided. Canadian leaders called the move baseless, a political stunt at the expense of a trusted ally. Copper was no random target. Canada is a top supplier, and U.S. industries depend on it. The tariff hit both sides. American manufacturers faced soaring costs, threatening jobs and profits. Within hours, Canada convened emergency meetings, the mood defiance, not retreat. The copper tariff was seen as an insult to Canadian sovereignty. Retaliation was inevitable. The stage was set for escalation. This was no longer just about copper. The flames of conflict were spreading fast. North America braced for impact. Canada struck back, fast and hard. The response was swift, calculated, and left no room for doubt about Canada's resolve. In the face of new American tariffs, Ottawa wasted no time in crafting a countermeasure that would send a clear message across the border. Within just 48 hours, the Canadian government unveiled a sweeping list of retaliatory tariffs. These new duties targeted a wide range of U.S. goods, from iconic Kentucky bourbon and creamy Wisconsin cheese to everyday essentials like washing machines. The tariffs were carefully chosen to hit products with both economic and symbolic value. The message was unmistakable. Every action would meet an equal reaction. Canada wanted to make it clear that it would not be pushed around, and that any economic aggression would be met with a proportional response. The Prime Minister, resolute on national TV, declared, "We will not be intimidated. These tariffs defend Canadian workers and pride." His words resonated across the nation, rallying support from citizens and businesses alike. The government's stance was firm. Canada would stand up for itself, no matter the cost. The phrase "a tariff for a tariff" quickly became a rallying cry, echoing through newsrooms, social media, and public demonstrations. It symbolized a new era of economic resistance and national unity. American industries felt the pain almost immediately. Kentucky bourbon distilleries and Wisconsin cheese factories saw orders from Canada plummet, threatening jobs and local economies. Even Florida oranges, a staple in many Canadian households, suddenly became 25% more expensive overnight. Shoppers were shocked by the price hikes, and businesses scrambled to adjust. Canada's strategy was deliberate: target politically sensitive U.S. regions to maximize pressure on Washington. By focusing on key states, Ottawa hoped to spark domestic backlash against the tariffs and force American leaders to reconsider. The tit-for-tat quickly escalated. Tariff lists grew longer, uncertainty soared, and businesses on both sides of the border were left reeling from the fallout. Trade slowed and the economic relationship between the two countries became strained. What began as a dispute over copper had now become a full-blown economic confrontation, grabbing headlines and dominating political debates in both nations. Both nations were now locked in a mutually destructive fight, with no easy way out. The cost of this trade war was mounting, and the future of cross-border relations hung in the balance. The trade war's real cost, it's not just numbers on a spreadsheet or headlines in the news. It's people, families, workers, and entire communities whose lives are being upended in ways that statistics can't fully capture. In Sudbury, Ontario, miner David Chen worried about layoffs. "We've always sold our copper to the States. Now my neighbor might lose his house." For David, the uncertainty isn't just about his own job, it's about the ripple effect through his town. Friends, neighbors, and even local businesses all feel the pressure as orders dry up and paychecks become less certain. In Erie, Pennsylvania, factory owner Maria Sanchez faced impossible choices: raise prices and lose contracts, or lay off friends I've worked with for years. The weight of responsibility is heavy. Maria's factory isn't just a business, it's a lifeline for dozens of families. Every decision she makes could mean the difference between stability and hardship for people she's known for decades. Tariffs hit more than copper. In Kentucky, bourbon distiller Bill lamented, "Canada is our biggest export market. This tariff is a punch to the gut, hurting farmers, barrel makers, truckers." The impact stretches far beyond the distillery walls, affecting everyone from the farmers who grow the grain to the truckers who deliver the bottles. Each link in the chain feels the strain. In Vancouver, Mom Sarah saw grocery bills climb. "It started with orange juice, then cheese, it all adds up. We're already stretched thin." For families like Sarah's, every trip to the store is a reminder of how quickly costs can rise, forcing tough choices about what to buy and what to leave behind. These stories echoed across the continent: miners, factory owners, distillers, parents, all caught in the crossfire. From small towns to big cities, the anxiety is shared, and the sense of uncertainty grows with each passing day. Tariffs weren't abstract policy, they were lost jobs, shuttered businesses, and rising costs for families. The effects are visible on every main street, in every home where bills pile up and futures seem less certain. The pain was immediate, personal, and widespread. It wasn't just about economics, it was about dignity, security, and hope for the future. Every worried face tells a story of dreams put on hold and plans suddenly uncertain. The trade war was no longer about numbers, it was about survival. For many, it meant standing in line at the employment office, packing up a lifetime of memories, or saying goodbye to a community they love. Communities on both sides of the border felt the shockwaves. The ties that bind neighbors, friends, and families across the US-Canada line were tested as uncertainty spread from one town to the next. The human cost was impossible to ignore. Tears, protests, and quiet moments of resilience became daily realities as people struggled to adapt and support one another. Policy debates had become real-world struggles. Decisions made in distant capitals now played out in living rooms, factories, and grocery stores, where the stakes were nothing less than people's livelihoods. Ordinary people were the first casualties. In the end, it was the everyday worker, the parent, the child, those with the least power, who bore the brunt of the trade war's fallout, reminding us that behind every policy are real lives forever changed. The trade war shattered North America's integrated supply chains. Cars assembled in Michigan, with parts from Ontario and electronics from Quebec, now faced border delays and soaring costs. Automakers' just-in-time systems broke down. Plants risked shutdowns or costly stockpiles. Food supply chains suffered too. Canadian pork producers and American farmers lost markets, leading to waste and higher prices. Companies scrambled to find domestic suppliers or considered moving operations abroad. The trust that built the North American economy was eroding. The trade war wasn't just a short-term disruption, it threatened to permanently reshape the continent's economic geography. The cost of political conflict was chaos for business and consumers alike. The trade war was political chess. For the Trump administration, tariffs projected America first toughness, especially before elections. Copper was a calculated target, disruptive but not as risky as a fight with China. Canada's retaliation was surgical, hitting US goods from politically sensitive states to spark domestic backlash. Both sides waged a war of narratives. The US painted Canada as unfair. Canada cast itself as the reasonable ally. Legal battles began. Canada filed a WTO complaint, the US dismissed global rules. The real fight was for public opinion and the moral high ground. Behind the scenes, trust was unraveling. The core fallacy: tariffs hurt everyone. U.S. manufacturers paid more for Canadian copper, passing costs to American consumers. Canadian tariffs on U.S. goods meant higher prices for Canadians and lost business for restaurants and retailers. Both economies suffered. Investments paused, jobs lost, uncertainty reigned. The real casualty was trust. Businesses could no longer count on stable rules. The ripple effects reached far beyond North America, shaking global confidence in trade. If the US and Canada could fracture, what hope was there for anyone else? The lesson: trade wars have no winners, only collateral damage. Economists were united: there are no winners in a trade war. Dr. Emily Vance called it mutual assured destruction. Tariffs tax both production and consumption. Gordon Bell explained, "We don't just trade goods, we build things together. Tariffs shatter that web." Analysts warned the real motive was political theater, not economic logic. The damage to trust and alliances, they said, would outlast any short-term gain. Studies showed tariffs might save a few jobs in one sector but destroy many more elsewhere. For every job saved in a U.S. copper mine, you lose 10 in factories and farms, Dr. Vance noted. The math was clear. The net effect was negative. The only winner was inefficiency. The world watched, and the cost was credibility. As pain mounted, both nations realized escalation was a dead end. The first step: suspend tariffs, declare a ceasefire, and start real negotiations. Talks would need to address not just copper but the entire trade relationship. Rebuilding trust would require business, civil society, and government working together. The US-Canada partnership was built on people, not just policies. The copper crisis was a cautionary tale. Friendship can be lost quickly, and trade wars wound everyone. The future depends on courage, compromise, and a return to cooperation. The time for conflict is over. The time to rebuild is now.